I don't know if you've checked it out lately, but it just seems like on every TV show and everything that's going on in the world, it's not really for marriage. You know, it's really not. I mean, one of our favorite TV shows is called Parenthood, and they had a scene on there just a couple of weeks ago, and this couple's been dating each other, and he goes to her, and he looks like he's about to propose, and he says, you know, I've been thinking a lot about this. You know, would you move in with me? And I just think there's a lot of commitment that we kind of leave out, and I think the more we study marriage and how we're to be married to each other and how we're to be in relationship with each other and how we're supposed to date to prepare and how important premarital is and all of those kind of things that we take in, it's important that you realize that, you know, I think it's weird. Do you think it's weird that you have to get a marriage license and then you never have to learn anything? I mean, think about it. Is there any other thing that you get a license for that they don't make you take some kind of a test? You know, I mean, that just kind of, anyway, so that's I'll get off my box and now start talking. I just wanted to give a couple of kind of reviews of last week. And I thought about this series because as a counselor, I heard all the time that, you know, I still love him, but I'm just not in love with him. And what they're talking about is I just don't feel, he doesn't make me feel like he used to, you know. Once we pass that first stage of love, it's so easy to fall in love because people just, you know, I mean, you just think about it. When you fell in love with somebody, it's just so easy. But what happens is, as we go along, it gets harder, and it takes work to stay in love. It takes work, and as you look out there and you see marriages beginning and marriages ending, and you're going to see some of the things we're going to talk about today. We are going to use the sex word today, ladies. And we're going to use the talk word, guys, today also. So we're going to use words that are very uncomfortable to some people. But one of the things we have to realize is if we're really gonna love this person and stay loved to this person that we're connected to, we got to realize that God made us different. One person's got certain strengths and weaknesses, and this person's got certain strengths and weaknesses. And when we come together, we're actually stronger together than we are apart. But what happens is, as we start duking it out after we pass that first level of love, then what happens is we get disappointed in that, and we start pulling away, and it just takes work. And you have to realize that it's not about, what's the first thing I'm putting there? It's more important than feeling like we love. When that person would say to me, I love him, I'm just not in love with him. You know what she's saying? I just don't feel it anymore. And sadly enough, when I'm counseling somebody like that, when they start realizing that they're not feeling it anymore, is because they're starting to feel that feeling with the guy in the cubicle next to him at work. See, it's not a feeling thing. So what's more important is you're working on your marriage, and you guys remember the first Sunday we started on this, I said, here's the rule. I'm teaching you this for you. That's why, you know, I hope there's no bruised ribs in here because you haven't been going like that as I said things. I'm teaching, everything that I'm teaching, it's for you. It's for you to be the best husband, the best wife, the best husband or wife in the future, or the best person in that relationship that you can be. That's what it's about. It's for you. What's more important than feeling like we love is that the person who is the object of our love feels loved. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's a big difference. That's a huge difference. And what I hear from people all the time, here's our problem. Our biggest problem with love is I give you love for one reason. I want it back. And if I'm not getting it back, I'm going to go find someplace else to get it. We've been created to be loved. And that's why our relationship with God is so important. So this kind of love cannot be done unless we use the action of love and we understand the needs of our spouse. So that's why it's an ongoing, and it's different. My wife's needs, who we've been married for 30-something years now, and I'm sorry I can remember how many years we've been married, but long enough that I shouldn't have to tell you how many years that it's been. But her needs are different now than they were when the babies were babies. And my needs are different, and we're different. So we've got to learn as we go along. They're different than when you first start dating each other and you're parking. You know, it's different. The needs are different. And so it should be an ongoing thing that we do to learn about. 1 John 3:16 says, we know that what real love is because Jesus gave up His life for us, so we ought to give up our lives for our brothers, our sisters, our wives, and our husbands. It's important for us to realize that love is an action, and it's an ongoing sacrifice. And here's what, because we don't think the way God thinks, what ends up happening is, even though our goal is not to love somebody so that they can love us back, I promise you, and I scare guys to death in premarital counseling, ladies. When I get a couple in premarital counseling, you know what I do? I get in the guy's face, and some of you are you can think what you want on this, but if you'll just pray and think about it, you're gonna believe I'm right. I get in the guy's face and say, look, if this marriage fails, it's your fault. So I know what some of you are just, I'm just telling you. In every organization, the buck has to stop somewhere. Somebody's responsible. And if the man will step up to the plate and be the responsible party to make that marriage, that relationship, that family, the best that it can possibly be, divorce is not going to happen. I'll just put it this way. It will be rare that divorce happens. And as we go through some of these needs today, that maybe you'll pick up on that. But I like in the class that we're doing, I was going to use Harley's list of 5 for this, but since we're doing the Rosberg study on Monday nights, I decided to use their study, which is a little bit different than the other. But always before a divorce physically, there's an emotional divorce. When that divorce happened, they hadn't been connected emotionally for a long time. And that's why it's so important that you look at where you're at right now. You may be thinking things are just going on good, and you got these kids you're dealing with and all this other kind of stuff. But where are you guys at emotionally? It's important. Look at Ephesians 5:21. Ephesians 5:21. He's saying to the husband and wives. Husband and wives, he says, look what it says. Would y'all say this with me? Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Y'all, that's why you love each other. That's why you love. That's why you can take some crud that's going on when it happens, and you can still love, because you're not loving to get love back. You're loving because you're already getting love, and you're giving reverence to Christ. And see, that's how we are in our relationships with everybody. But Paul here in Ephesians really ties it into the marriage. And we've got to realize that, a marriage, I'll just tell you, and this is going to hurt some people's feelings, but a marriage is never one-sided. It's never, ever, ever, ever one-sided. Now, if you married a sorry son of a gun, he was sorry before you married him. So you got to think your decision was probably a bad decision to make in the first place. It's always both sides. And I will tell you this, because I counsel with lots of women when men wouldn't come to counseling. I counsel with lots of women that when they just decided that they were going to suck it up and be who they were supposed to be in a marriage, it was amazing the way the men would start to change. So if you get a man and a woman both doing that, they become better parents, better spouses. It changes everything. And as a spouse, there's even, and I didn't put the reference on here, but there's 3 different places in Scripture where it talks about mutual submission. It talks about women submitting to their husbands, and it talks about men submitting to their wives and dying for them like Christ. But there's one, and it might be in Ephesians 5, but in one of those references, it actually says, women, if you will be more Christ-like, you will change your husband. And as a counselor, I know that happens. I've seen it happen over and over and over and over again. People do change. So let's look. We're going to look at the 5 love needs of men and a woman as told by Gary and Barbara Rosberg. By the way, if you want to, that's a good reference book to read. There's also another one that I use all the time in premarital stuff if you want to write this down. It's called His Needs, Her Needs, How to Build an Affair-Proof Marriage. by Willard Harley. I don't see anybody writing that down, so y'all must be okay with it. It's called His Needs, Her Needs, How to Build an Affair-Proof Marriage by Willard Harley. And again, it's important that you learn these things and learn more about your spouse. And as you read these books, and women will usually go out and get the books before men. Men, if you want to make some major brownie points, not only do you have a brownie, not only do you have a date night with your wife, but you sit down with her and you read these books. And you read these marriage books, and you learn from each other and say, how do you feel about that? How do I feel about it? Okay? So let's look. Number one, according to Rosberg's, men's number one need is unconditional love. Now, y'all remember what we talked about when we said unconditional love? Let me just say this straight out. It's impossible to you to feel unconditionally in love with somebody for the rest of your life. It's impossible. Because those feelings go with the way you're thinking about things. And if you're really, really angry about the way your spouse has been acting lately, you're not feeling in love with that person. But you can unconditionally love by the action. 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8, 4 through 7. Love is patient, love is kind. The love checklist we talked about. Men need to be loved no matter what. And for men, it's it's much more of a, I don't know how else to say this, but a macho thing. The man wants to be your knight in shining armor. He really does. I had this young couple sitting in my office, and they'd been married for 5 years. And beautiful couple, beautiful kids. They were the all-American family, and everybody wanted to be like them. And they've been married for 5 years. They were duking it out. And she was pretty hard-nosed. She was one of these ladies that just, man, she knew her. She dotted her I's and crossed her T's and just had everything. She was a list person. She was, she kind of like Lisa. No, but she was very organized. She got things done, and I told y'all this a couple of weeks ago. This is one of the couples I was talking about. I said, what'd you fall in love with? And she said, well, I love that he's so easygoing and all. And what'd you fall in love with hers? Oh, she just gets things done. And now that they're duking out, he's lazy and she's a nag. He's the different word. But one day, she wouldn't cry. She wouldn't cry. She's just one of these people. She didn't want her husband to see her cry. And when they get in a fight, she'd go in the bedroom and she'd close the door and she'd cry where he couldn't see it. And one day they're just sitting there and they're just, boy, you can just feel the hate almost. I mean, these people just 5 years ago loved each other like crazy. And I said, can I just ask you something? What do you want of him? He's sitting over there just. He's had it. He's ready to get out. She's just telling him too many things to do. He just wants to go have a good time. And you know what she said? I want him to be my knight in shining armor. You know what he said? You won't let me. So ladies, if you want your man to be your shining armor, you got to let him. And if you're cutting him down all the time and everything because his personality is different from yours, and he's not feeling that love and that acceptance and that feeling like he's your knight up on top of that horse, I counsel with couples all the time that she's been knocking him off his horse since the day they got married. It just happens. So it's that I need to know that you love me no matter what. I need to know that you think and you know that I can do it. That's what the guys need, and this is a big deal. It's a big deal. This is what comes out number one for the guys is that need for unconditional love. Now, guess what it is for women? Number one, Unconditional love. It's the same thing. It's a little bit different about going, I need to know that you love me with a Christ-like love. Can I just tell you something? And it may not be true with every couple, and y'all know who you are, but I will just tell you something. Women are normally more spiritual than men. It's just an easier, natural thing for a woman to be spiritual, easier than it is for a man. I'm not really sure why that works out that way, but it is. And I can't tell you how many Christian women have sat in my office over the years and wanted so bad for their husband to be the spiritual leader of the family. And I'm not talking about wimpy women, although I have never met a wimpy woman. I got out of that one, didn't I? I'm talking about women that are executives and women that have these high-paid professional jobs and women that are very successful in life. They want their husbands spiritually to take the lead in the family. And I want to tell you something. Study after study after study shows that if the man's willing out of love to take that, not legalistically rule over you, but if a man's willing to take that spiritual leadership in the family, it even affects your kids greatly. You know, there's a very high dropout rate there's a very good chance that the average kid, by the time they get out of high school and they've gone to church their whole life, they quit God. They become agnostic or atheist or whatever they decide that they're going to become. Because what happens is they look at their father and they say, you know, his spiritual relationship didn't seem very relevant. It didn't make much difference in his life. So why would I go through and do all of that? But she wants that. Look what Ephesians 5:25 says. The same love that Christ showed the church, He gave up His life for her. That's a very strong... I'll just... You know, I love it when I'm teaching a class and I say women are submit to their husband, and the husband goes, see? But let me tell you something. The submission command on the man is much greater. You're told to die for your wife. You're told to die for your life. Now, all of us would go, well, I'd take a bullet for my wife. Yeah, but would you live your life like a Christian for your wife? Would you die to your own physical needs for your wife? That's important to being the spiritual leader of the family. And I just put a few things on there. The woman needs you to stand with her. And I talked to you all a couple of weeks ago about the whole in-law thing. It's important that your family men know that your wife is number one in your life. Your family needs to know that. Your work needs to be... You know, never cut your wife down in front of the kids. Ever, 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 ever. You deserve... Wife, call me and I'll send some bouncers over there. We'll slap them around. That should never, ever, ever happen. That respect should always be shown. And if you've ever got any difference with your wife at all, it should happen in a loving way, just you and her, and not in front of other people. Practice complimenting her. Respect her opinion. It was very hard for me to learn that I've got a very smart wife. And we suffered in my marriage early because of that. She's better at handling the finances than I am. You know, I submitted to that, about 30 bounce checks into our marriage, you know. It's important to realize and respect her opinion and all. Talk with her and listen. Become a listener. We had a busy few days, and we laid down last night, and Lisa and I, we just love at the end of the day we DVR all of our favorite shows, and we laid down last night to watch Blue Bloods, and she goes, would you just hug me? We haven't talked all day long. There's that talk word, man, you know what I'm saying? I'm thinking, this is pretty cool. We're laying beside each other. We didn't talk all day long. It was all on her mind. And I'm going, you know, this is a good scene. Be tender with her and serve her. Serve her. Learn those love languages. I hope you guys picked up on something on that last week. Okay, men need number 2. You ready? It's the word. Intimacy. And that is spelled for men S-E-X. I spelled that for any of the young people that are in here. Ladies, listen, ladies. sex is more important to the man than you think. Oh, I know it's important. We've thought about that. No. Well, no, what I'm saying is remember, it's about having empathy for him and understanding where he's coming from. And what happens for a man, that's a part of that same thing that, as a matter of fact, on Harley's list, this is number one. On Harley's list, this is number one. And it's funny, when I'm doing premarital counseling, I'll have the guys talk about their needs. And the guy, when he's first in love with his wife and he's trying to make an impression, he never, ever wants her to think that sex is number one. And I'll go, dude, if it's number one, you can say. He goes, okay, it's number one. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's an important thing. And I'll just tell you something. Women can't understand that. And I'm not real sure what all the reasons are, except for this. Do you know that on the top 5 needs on Willard's list, Harley's list, sex is not even listed for the woman? Matter of fact, the number 1 list for the man on the woman, for his list, is affection. You know? You don't have to raise your hand, but I would say most couples in here have heard this at some time in their marriage. Can't we just hug? You know what I'm saying? It's important. It's very important. And what ends up happening is the husband feels rejected. Remember, a big part of the husband feeling unconditionally loved is feeling like he's important. And so the man will... I don't know about y'all, but those commercials that end up with a man and a woman in bathtub sitting out in their yard, those are uncomfortable commercials to me, you know. But but it's so, that's why that medication is selling so good. Because when a man can't, it's his manhood. It's much more of a... I'll just tell you something. For a woman, for a woman, there's very little that can go wrong for a woman sexually, physically, that will affect her in that way. For a woman, it's like 99% mental. For a man, about 50% of the problems that a man can have to not be able to be intimate are physical. And for the man it's terrible. That's why, I've seen men interviewed that said, if they had told me to save my life from prostate cancer, that this was going to happen to me, I would have said, let me die. I've seen men say that in interviews. Can I just tell you something, ladies? It's important. It's important. Remember, I'm teaching you all this for each of you individually, not men so that you could say, see, honey, I told you it's important. No, you've got to understand. You've got to understand. Okay, I want the guys to bow their head and close their eyes for just a minute, because I'm going to show a scripture that I want the women to look at by themselves. Okay, guys? Look out. Look out. We got a bouncer in the room. All right. You ready? Okay. Ladies, I want you to read this scripture silently. It's not on your notes. Would you just look at this for just a second? I know there's some women in here going, no way. That's not in the Bible. No way. It is a way. It is a way. We've got to realize how important physical is to our spiritual. Guys, you can look up now. No grinning or anything. You can look at this scripture. But I'm going to read this to you, okay? And I just want you to think. This is in the Bible. The same, just like thou shalt not kill and all of those other things. This is a command. This is an actual command. So here it is. The husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs. The wife should fulfill her husband's needs. The wife gives authority over her body to her husband. And the husband gives authority over his... You see what he's saying with these two verses right here? This takes away any angry control, men, that you try to take over your wife when that doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? And then look what verse 5 says. Do not deprive each other of sexual relations. It's important. It's an important part of your life. And for the woman, it becomes much... Well, the men spell intimacy, S-E-X, and women spell it T-A-L-K. It's about that emotional, psychological relationship. Women's need number 2 is intimacy, and it's affection. It's affection. I think that's the next slide. There we go. And this may be one of the hardest needs for a guy to meet. I know, ladies, let's just say if it's just as important for you to realize that the physical part is important to the man, then it's also important to you to realize that this part of it is very hard for a man, because this is not a natural thing. That's why learning to listen. Learning to listen. You want to see Lisa mad? It happens when I think something else is more important than what she's saying. It also happens when I feel like all of a sudden she's been talking about the same thing for too long. That's just such a stupid thing to do. You know what I'm saying? But I fall into that trap over and over again because she likes to talk. You know? And that's okay. What I have to do is I have to learn to love that and listen, because that's something that she needs. And I want to tell you, she needs that as much as I need the physical part. Again, it's important that we learn each other, that we learn about what's going on with each person. For a woman, when it comes to getting intimacy, it's more about the heart. It's more about the heart. I used to work a lot with youth, and years ago, before sex became so prevalent on TV and everything else, I used to counsel with women all the time that still had deep, crazy, deep regrets about the sexual life they had before when they were younger. And because again, it's much more of a heart issue for a woman than it is for a man. And that's why carrying that around, and that's why I think it's so tough right now that you just can't turn anything on. That everything you see right now that's not scriptural, that's not biblical, is teaching people that there's something wrong with them if they don't want to do that with as many people and as often as they possibly can. And as a counselor, I counsel people down the road after those things happen. And realize it. But guys, that affection, because what ends up happening is the woman just ends up feeling used, especially if she's had other relationships that were terrible as it went along. And if you're not giving that intimacy, that affection that they need, and again, for a woman, that's why it's important that you're listening, it's important that you're talking, it's important that you're hearing what she's saying and realizing that those things are important, and making the things that have to do with the house and everything else important to her. And what happens is, if she's not getting that because a woman won't think of this as a sexual need. It's an emotional need. And I'll just tell you something. It's way easier for her to go out and get her emotional need met than it is for you to go out and get your physical need met. And the emotional leads to physical. It does. That emotional intimacy. You can call it an emotional affair. And I just want to tell you something. Ladies, if there is any man in your life right now that's making you feel good emotionally, stop. Stop. Because you know what he's thinking. I'm just telling you. A man and a woman cannot be close friends and talk to each other about their emotional things without the other coming, or at least being tempted for that to happen. And you don't see it all the time. When I was younger, when Lisa and I were in our young 20s, she said this lady at the office had a crush on me. And I just thought she was being nice. She worked in the thing beside me. And I don't know, maybe it felt good that she was kind of hitting on me all the time. And one day, everybody in the office was going out to lunch. And I just lived a few miles from home. So I called Lisa and said, hey, I'm not coming home for lunch. I'm going to lunch with everybody. And she goes, well, who's going to off lunch? I'm saying, well, Bob's going to lunch, and Danny's going to lunch, and so-and-so going to lunch. I mentioned this lady's name, and Lisa goes, well, okay, because she'd already been warning me about this lady. And then when it got time for lunch, all of a sudden the lady came up to me and she said, you know what, Royal, everybody's canceled except you and me. And I went, well, where do you want to go eat? So, needless to say, when I got home from work, you know what Lisa's first question was? Who went to lunch with you today? And I said, well, honey, you're just not going to believe this. Everybody. I'm just telling you guys, it always, the emotional always starts. So guys, if there's a lady at the office that's making you feel good, look, I've got some very specific rules in my life. If any of you ladies, if you ask me to drive you home, I'm not. Now, I may follow behind you in the car while you walk, but I'm not driving you home. You know what I'm saying? It's just not going to happen. And if you need counseling, I'm not going to see you up here by myself. I don't want to put you in a position, and I don't want to put me in a position. But I just want to say, you got to be careful that emotionally we're affair, guys. If you've got somebody, if you've got a female men, if you have a female that's meeting your emotional needs, you've got to cut it off now. Ladies, if you've got a male, you've got to cut it off now. And I'll tell you something. If you do have somebody that's meeting those needs, then you don't wait till you have an affair to go get counseling. You go now. You get help now. Number 3, for a man needs friendship. A man needs friendship. He needs a recreational partner. He likes you to... you know what? I love it when Lisa sits down and watches a football game with me. You know, guys want, it's so easy for a man to walk up to another man. You know, some of you guys, you got a motorcycle, don't you? And Dennis got a motorcycle. We can go talk. Oh, you don't have a motorcycle anymore. Dude, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. His wife told him to sell it. No, I'm just kidding. But I just lost my train of thought. Oh, we need that relationship. And oftentimes when we fall in love with a woman, she likes going to the games with us, and she likes doing all that other kind of stuff. I talked to you guys about that last week, that oftentimes if you do things when you're first falling in love with somebody and then you don't do it after you're married, then the person just feels ripped off. And it's important that ladies, that you step into your husband's zone and do some of the things he likes to do. Look, if all the fun you're having, and again, I hate people to feel like I'm stepping on their toes or whatever, but I'm not for a ladies' night out for married couples. Maybe every once in a while, but I'm not for all the women going on a vacation together to Mexico and leaving the husbands at home. I'm not for men going off all the time and doing things by themselves with their women. I've been on the counseling end of it. I've seen it mess up too many times. It's important that you're doing things together. It's okay to go play golf with the guys every once in a while, but look, if you're taking 6 golf trips a year and you're going and spending the night someplace and staying there for 2 or 3 days, and you all go to the bar afterwards for happy hours and you get a little bit of alcohol in and stuff, look, you are asking for trouble. Ladies and men, you're asking for trouble. Number 3, women need security. They need security. There's no greater comfort and security than there is insecurity. And again, they also want that spiritual closeness. They want to know that men, they want to know that you're there. And they want to know that you're there for the kids too. See, a lot of guys just go, you know, and we got some great parents in here, you guys. We ought to have like a parenting hall of fame, because we got some incredible parents in this church. But guys have to realize that, you know, just because you're off winning the bread for the family or whatever, it doesn't mean that you don't have parental responsibilities, and the wife needs that. You know, sometimes if the wife, especially if the wife's, in most families that the husband and wife works, the wife also has all the kid responsibilities. Now, if you just take all the emotion out of it and you just look back at it, and I was just to make that statement, say you just come here from another planet, and they said, well, you're a husband and you're a wife, and I go to work, and she goes to work all day, and then she goes home and take care of the kids, and I watch TV. They'd go, well, she's either Superwoman or there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that. And that's part of the security that the woman says. And we've got to be a servant leader, and not a passive or controlling leader, but a servant leader. Mark 10:45. For even I, the Son of Man, come here not to be served, but to serve others and give my life as a ransom for many. The rewards of spiritual leadership, men, is that you have spiritual fruit in your family. And we use this verse all the time, but what if, let's just say what if you and your wife were constantly living a life where you felt love and you felt joy and you felt peace and you felt patience and kindness and goodness, and no divorce here, and good relationships, and with that comes good intimacy also. Men, number 4 is men needs encouragement and admiration. They need to be cheered on. Was it the second Rocky that Rocky got the crud beat out of him? No, he always got the crud beat out of him. No, but he decided he wasn't going to fight. Oh, Adrian got hurt. And Adrian was out, and he just decided he wasn't going to fight, and she didn't want him to fight. And then there's that scene where they're at the bed, and the guys are all watching it going, come on, Adrian, tell him it's okay to fight. You know what I'm saying? We're all standing up, we're watching, come on. And then all of a sudden she wakes up and she says, you just said, when? And it was just like, we need that. You guys know this. I tell you this all the time. The person I look to for my compliments, the person I look for my encouragement is my wife. And again, men, if you're not getting that from your wife, if you're trying to get it somewhere else, then it's just not going right. We need to be admired. We want to be admired by everybody, but ladies, you've got to be admiring your husband. You've got to be the one to encourage him, and you've got to be the one that applauses him. Gives him applause, and then what happens is, if you're doing that, I told y'all, Lisa will tell me on Sunday when I'm tired after I preaching that I did a good job. Wednesday, she'll tell me where I messed up. Because I'm not ready to hear that on Sunday. I'm ready to hear that later on. And she can do that because I know that she's my greatest encourager, and all that she wants is best for me. Women need encouragement also. They need to be reminded. They need to be reminded all the time, men, how important they are to you. We've got to understand how she's wired. We've got to give her first place in our life with all people, with our friends, with our employers, with our kids. Your kids can never be first place in your life. Your wife is first place. And let me tell you something. If your kid is first place in your life and your wife is not, you're going to have a screwed up kid when he's 30 years old. And I'm going to be counseling him. And he's going to say, you know what I hated about? He said, my dad let me do everything. He spoiled me rotten. He didn't teach me any boundaries. He didn't listen to mom. I can't tell you how many people sat in my office time and time again. 30-year-old men that were depressed because they never learned boundaries from a parent. It's important. If your wife is first and your kids know, that's one of the greatest things that can help your kid become a healthy adult. Point out her potential. Encourage her to do new things. Appreciate her contribution to your life and making you better and in the family. Men's need number 5. Men also need that spiritual connection. That real life connection. We've talked about this over and over and over again. The average church couple that just kind of goes to church every once in a while but really doesn't live out their faith. They really don't study their Bible. They really don't pray together. They live a separate life outside of church and they live inside. The divorce rate among that group is actually a little bit higher than the person who's not a Christian. But the couple that serves together, prays together, reads their Bible together, goes to church on a regular basis, the divorce rate goes to like 1 in 1,100. It's incredible the difference that it makes. And then women need, number 5, friendship. And did I leave a blank beside that? Here's what I thought to go with this: trust. This is a trust thing. Women need to know that you're going to grow old with them. That you're a safe place. That you honor her. That you're a man of integrity. That you do things together. And we got to step into their world. Can I just tell you something? It's a beating for me to go to Walmart. I don't know about, do your wives like to look at furniture even when you're not buying? You know what I'm saying? Oh my goodness, I just can't. It's like, oh, we're not buying that. Why are we looking at that? You know what I'm saying? I mean, but sometimes I'll go, you want to go furniture looking? You know, I mean, those are important things. We've got to step into their world. You know, when my wife's, we've lived in our house for 12 years, and she slowly painted this and painted that and put new, and I didn't always think it needed new carpet yet. You know what I'm saying? But it's important that I recognize that. It's important that I tell her that I like it. And you know, it's easy because my wife is pretty good at all that kind of stuff. But it's important that we step into their world and we make the things important to them, to us, are important to them. And I've gone a little bit long today, but I think this is just really important. I recommend this book to you. I've got the reference on there. I also recommend Harley's book. I also recommend that you guys spend time with each other and learn together. If you're not coming to the class Monday night, look, give up your next 6 weeks and invest in coming to this class on Monday nights. And I think you'll be glad that you did. So let's just go. This is, if you're a guest here today, we go into what we just call a time with God, which means there may have been something God has convicted you of during this time, or something you need to pray about. And on the time of God, I put a question on here for you, just to think about, because this is one of those things that I don't think we just automatically think along these ways. I think we've got to ask God, and there'll be something that God's convicted you of here that you need to talk about before you leave, because you get out there and you'll forget about it. But ask God, am I loving out of reverence for Christ?